Hi, welcome back to Educator.com and AP Psychology. This particular segment, we are going to be looking at the science of psychology. Yes, you heard it right, the science of psychology. Is psychology a science? If you are like some of my friends, they will say, no, it's not a science. But other people will say, yeah, it's a science, kinda, but it's a soft science. It's not like the hard sciences of biology and chemistry and physics. But truth be told, the methodology is the same as the so-called hard sciences. It's just that molecules are not nearly as complex as humans. So, going to have some overlap with these other areas, and which is one of the things that makes psychology very cool. But when we're looking at psych as a science, it is indeed a scientific endeavor. Is there an aspect of psychology that is more practical and non-scientific? Yes, absolutely. Anyone who is honest about psychology will admit that some of the more practical things like clinical psychology are not the most scientific. However, in terms of the research that psychologists do, it is as much science as chemistry and biology, etc. Empiricism. You remember back when we were looking at the background and where did psychology and the science of psychology come from? There was this idea of empiricism, to be able to measure and describe behaviors, to gather empirical evidence. That's going to be huge here. Evidence, not CSI evidence, but clues and observable things. That is to say, information gained from direct observation and measurement. And then to gather data, observed facts, measurable facts. What is science? You can actually, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually take a course in college called The Philosophy of Science. And there are some really good books out there if you're ever interested in reading about it. But it gets into the idea of what's the thought process behind what science is. But for our purposes, it's exploring what is true, what is provable. What can you prove? The thing is with science is that what is true can change over time when new and better information comes along. That's the joy of research. You've got your ideas, you test them out, given the materials and the resources and the tools you have at the time, you have that conclusion. Later on, some more research comes along, slightly different tools, find out some different conclusions, the truth changes. Science is the systematic observation and experimentation for answering scientific questions, uses precise definitions, testing hypotheses. So we don't just say my hypothesis is truth. We say, hey, let's test it out. We also replicate, which is to say we repeat using the same basic formula that the first research study did on a topic. We will try to replicate that in other areas. And we strive for objectivity as a goal. We want to reduce bias as much as humanly possible. Involved in science is going to be critical thinking. Not lazy thinking, but critical thinking. Critical thinking can be defined as the ability and willingness to assess claims and make objective, unbiased judgments on the basis of well-supported reasons and evidence rather than emotion or anecdote. I have a number of students who have said to me, oh yeah, I believe in ghosts, or I follow my horoscope. Well, do you follow it to look for life advice, or do you follow it for humor? When we look at anecdote, that's a personal story. So, to me, to scientists, it doesn't matter if an individual has a personal story that to them proves that ghosts exist. It just doesn't hold water. It doesn't carry the weight that it needs to. Instead, we're going to be using critical thinking, where we analyze, evaluate, and synthesize information, your higher order thinking skills. And so you have to ask questions like, what would you expect to see if this claim were true? Because sometimes someone will make a claim, but then you would expect to see another set of behaviors as a result of it, but those don't ever turn out to be the case. And so you have to look through and ask this question. You have to gather evidence relevant to the claim. You can't just say, "'Cause I said so." No, that's for 3-year-olds and parents without a good reason. You have to evaluate the evidence, and you have to draw conclusions. And to me, critical thinking, my goal is not to have you think the way I do. It's to think for yourself, to think critically, because it's for use in all science and, well, quite frankly, life.